Okay, so first things first, Happy New Year to everybody. I think we can all agree that 2020 was a rough year and it's not going to get better just because it's a new year. But that doesn't mean we can't take the time and try to make 2021 just a little bit better. In case you're new here, I'm Adrian Thompson and this is my channel where we talk about finances in a frugal way since I grew up in poverty and being poor for most of my life. Today's video is specifically going to be me looking about what I've accomplished financially over the past year. This is something I tend to do at the beginning and end of every single year. I've already made a video on how I budget. I'll put it in one of the corners. But what I essentially do is I'll set goals for each year that I want to hit, and sometimes 5 years out. Typically, I'll do a 5-year plan. Then I'll take those goals and work them retroactively into my budget. That way I basically have a system that almost guarantees that I hit the financial goals that I set for myself. However, when you do budget like this, the only downside is it's so systematic and it takes care of itself that you tend to forget why you're budgeting for certain things. That's why usually at the end of the year, I like to sit down and look back how I did financially in order to better prepare my goals for the following year, but also to criticize and look at what I could have done differently in the previous year. So first, let's rewind to this time last year and look at the goals I set for myself to accomplish in 2020. So the goals I set for myself were by the end of 2020, I wanted to be completely debt-free, own a reliable and useful car, and keep my fixed expenses under $500, or at least get them to under $500. I knew going into 2020 that the Volkswagen Passat that I had was going to be replaced because it was on its last legs, I promise you on that one. And then I knew I promised myself that I wanted to be debt-free 2 years after graduating college. And I also knew that since I'm 24, now is the time to get your fixed expenses really low so you can start saving up money for the future. So 2020 was a weird year. I had a lot of large purchases that I had to make that I was planning for as well. So I'm gonna combine those with my debt and kind of look at the debt and large expenses that I had to make in 2020. So that's $17K for the student loans, which I knew, $13K for my Honda Civic, $1.5K because I broke my hand in 2020, $1.2 thousand for this MacBook Pro right here, and then $600 for the camera and the equipment that I use for this YouTube channel. So all of that added up equals about $33,300, which was almost how much money I was making coming out of college. Not my take home, that was essentially my salary coming out of college. So going into 2020, I knew I had to significantly increase my income in order to prepare to actually hit these goals. $33,000 is a lot of money, so I knew I had to make more money. So the next segment of this video is essentially me adding up my total take home pay for the year. So I've said it before on this channel, but luckily for me, I was able to start a new job going into 2020 where my salary itself was $72,000. So my take home pay for that year was $48,041.49. Taxes are I must say. Also, I give you guys real and straight up numbers. So if you appreciate that, if you appreciate me just straight up telling you how much I make and when I make it, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button because I think more people should be like this on YouTube. I see the trend going, but I think this is how it always should have been. I don't really understand not talking about money. It never made sense to me and it still doesn't. With my job, I also get 57 cents per mile that I drive, and I drive a decent amount. So that's supposed to pay for repair, gas, and the depreciation on the car. So if you have a car that doesn't depreciate much, like a Honda Civic, and it has really good gas mileage, you can actually profit a lot of money from mileage. So after all the expenses, I probably profited roughly $16,000 this year in just driving alone. But once again, I drive a crap ton. I've also profited about $3,000. Well, at the end of 2020, I had about $3,000 of profit in stock investments. That's actually closer to 5 now, but I won't count it since it was technically 2021 when a lot of my investments jumped. And on top of that, I take surveys. I still think everybody should take it. I'll put the link below. And I've got about $1,000 last year from taking Pew Poll surveys alone. It's insane. So rounding everything and adding it together, my total take home pay, not my salary, this is how much money I received in my bank account at the end of the year, is essentially $68,000. So first things first, this is more money than I've ever expected to make, to be completely honest with you. My take home pay is almost double than what my parents made growing up. And keep in mind, when I say my parents, it was a single parent household. So my mom probably, her salary averaged around $35,000 to $40,000 my whole time, but I have 3 brothers. So it was a single mom taking care of 4 kids on that take home pay. And there were times where it was 0 and a lot less than $40,000. All of that is to say that this money is more than I've ever expected to have. And I know a lot of people are envious of my situation. That is not lost on me, but I also know people do significantly better than me. And that's something I strive for and think about all the time. How can I better myself and honestly just become the #1 one. I know that sounds stupid, but that's how my brain works. I'm a hyper competitive person. So me knowing that people make more money than me is a motivation for me and something to remind me to stay disciplined and make smart, proactive, intelligent decisions moving forward. So the reason I wanted to add up my take-home pay wasn't to be braggadocious. It was just to make sure that my goals were realistic with the amount of money that I was actually taking home. So like I said before, $33,300 was the amount of money I was going to have to dedicate into hitting my financial goals. And since my take-home pay was almost double that, I knew I was going to be able to actually achieve those goals. Specifically, since I was able to buy a new car and pay off my student loans, that right there were 2 of the 3 goals that I set out for myself. So I was able to achieve goal 1 and goal 2. So let's see if I was able to achieve goal 3. So my third goal was to get my fixed expenses. So just so you guys know, that's talking about insurance or your gas bill, your phone bill, your utilities, and your rent. It's the things that stay basically the same amount of money that you're just gonna have to pay in order to keep living. I wanted all of that amount to be less than $500 by the end of the year. That way I would be able to save at least 70% of my take-home pay. So I wanted those fixed expenses to be less than $500. And some people might be watching from different parts of the country or different places in the world and go, there's no way to get the amount of money you spend lower than that. So keep in mind that I'm 24 and I'm willing to live in a low quality of life. I don't think I live in a low quality of life, but it is the time to do it since you are younger. So it's going to be basically better than how you were living in college, but not the best you're going to live in your entire life. And keep in mind that I live in Atlanta, Georgia, which actually is a very, very reasonable place in terms of cost of living to actually live in. So this might not translate well to somebody living in New York or California or a bigger city or a place with higher taxes. We just happen to have a low cost of living and high quality of life and relatively low taxes compared to other places. When I was scripting this video, I was thinking about a conversation, or I guess you could call it an argument, that my brother and I had, where he said that I was lucky to be able to have my fixed expenses below $500. In my head, I was like, luck had nothing to do with it. It took a lot of scary decisions and honestly risky decisions, but smart decisions at the same time to get to where I'm at, to get my fixed expenses below $500. To clarify, I had to move from Spartanburg to Atlanta, from Atlanta to Raleigh, from Raleigh back to Atlanta, and then get roommates along the way in order to get my fixed expenses lower. So I've put a lot of work and energy into setting my life up to where it is right now. All of that is to say is I sacrificed in order to get my fixed expenses to the level that I wanted them to be at, and I made intelligent, smart, insightful decisions in order to get it to where I wanted it to be. Currently, I'm actually paying about $430 for rent and utilities. And that just allows more money from my take-home pay to be dedicated towards savings and investments in order to make my money make money for me when I'm not working. Obviously, you might be somebody with a kid or somebody in a relationship or in an area where that's just not possible. I completely understand that. I just implore you to actually criticize your position and not lie to yourself, because this is the easiest way I found to save so much money over the course of a year compared to anywhere else. If you can get your rent down, that's the easiest way to half the amount of money you have to spend every single month. In summary, I was able to pay off my student loans. I was able to pay and buy a reliable car. I completely own the car, and my fixed expenses are so low right now that I have a decent amount of my take-home pay able to just change my net worth every single month. Now that we've looked at what I did in 2020, let's look at what I want to do in 2021. So this year, I want to end 2021 with a bank account that has $1,000 in it for emergency fund, a high yield savings account with 6 months of expenses saved, a ring for my girlfriend, and then enough money saved in order to put money down for a condo. The account that has my 6 months of expenses in it, I'm expecting to put roughly $6,000 in that account. I'm also planning and budgeting to put $10,000 toward a ring. And then finally, I think a down payment for a condo at the place I'm looking at and where I'm trying to be is going to be roughly $30,000. On top of all of that, I'm about to have ACL surgery in 2 weeks. So that's gonna be roughly $4,000 on what I have to pay. So I'm going to go ahead and tag that into the goals that I have set for myself in order to have that surgery completely paid off. So adding all of that together, I'm looking at it right now, that's a grand total of $47,000. That's a lot of money. So that's one of the main reasons my goal in 2020 was to keep my expenses and to get my expenses really low. I only spend about $1,000 a month, so I only need $12,000 across the course of a year in order to just live my life. So if this year goes anything like last year, I should have enough money to hit these very aggressive goals. And I plan on tracking everything on this YouTube channel, so hopefully that keeps me accountable. If you guys see me slipping, go ahead and rip me apart in the comments and subscribe so you can follow along to see if I actually hit these goals. So that's pretty much it for today's video. So how do you guys think I did? What do you think about my goals? What do you think about the goals I accomplished in 2020? Could I have done better? Could I have done something differently? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, it may be hard now, but does not always have to be. I'll see you in the next one.